Otis Johnson. Former mayor, past mayor. If I think it's got to be school, so you doctor, what would you like to go? Did a little additional research. I didn't know you served on the Naval Reserve. Yeah. But I want to be brief today. I think most of these people know who you are. I want to get you up there as quickly as possible. In fact, even when I told the person he's right. Because I do like to give advice and not to have a nice introduction. It's like, don't talk. Of course, the first person that you would suspect if this happened at the time of slavery was slavery. Welcome to the January 3rd meeting of 2022. I'd like to hope everybody had a great holiday season. I wish for each of you good health and much happiness as we travel down this journey in 2022. If you'll direct your attention to the screen, we'll have a rendition of God Bless America. Please feel free to join in. After that time, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country, and Jamie Espina will give our invocation.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America.
It's my new ventriloquism act. As we move forward into the year of 2022, some will only move forward in our hearts and in our memories. I ask that we take a moment of silence to celebrate and honor their lives, including the members of our own Rotary. Please join me. Thank you and Happy New Year.
Thanks, Jamie. I'd like to tell you that our president, Marjorie, is in Albuquerque, New Mexico. She's taken a little time to visit with her daughter. So she's watching us on Zoom. So have a great time, Marjorie. And now I'd like to call up Fran Kaminsky, our past secretary and treasurer, who will introduce our guest and visiting Rotarians.
Thank you. President Eddie and fellow Rotarians, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest today. As I call your name, please stand and remain standing so that we may welcome you as a group to our club. Our visiting Rotarian today is Jerome Russell from the Atlanta, Georgia Club, guest of Todd Gross. Our guests today are Lieutenant Colonel Craig Giancaterno, no, my eyes. Director of Emergency Services, Fort Stewart Hunter, guest of Tom Roberts. Matthew Worth from Congressman Carter's office, guest of Trey Thompson. Congressman Buddy Carter, guest of Trey Thompson. And Zoe Rinker from the Savannah Tree Foundation, guest of the club. Please welcome our guests.
Thanks, Fran. You always do such a great job. Today, I have the honor of presenting a Hugh Thomas Fellow. A Hugh Thomas Fellow is from the Georgia Rotary Student Program, and it's at the $2,500 level. Hugh Thomas was a member of this club, and he's the father of the now member, Hugh Thomas III. Hugh Thomas was president of our club in 1952-53. And then he was district governor in 1964-65. He was very instrumental in the Georgia Rotary Student Program. And because he and his wife Alma were so active, they changed the headquarters to Savannah, Georgia, and it's still the headquarters now. Today, we're going to honor a longtime Rotarian, Rick Belford. Rick has been a member of this club since 1969, and it's my pleasure to honor you with a Hugh Thomas Fellow. Come forward, Rick. And speaking of the Georgia Rotary Student Program, we're going to have an update from our Georgia Rotary student, Celia Klug.
Hi, Happy New Year to everybody. I'm going to give you a little update on what I've been up to in December. So I hope yeah, okay, perfect. So in the first week, I flew to New York. It was a fun trip. And the pictures should come up soon. Okay, so yeah, we flew in on the 9th of December and we had a gorgeous view when we came in. And the first thing we did, we went to the First Avenue, and I also saw the Statue of Liberty. You will see a lot of sites that were included in your God Bless America video, which is kind of funny. So we went to Ellis Island, and on the ferry, we had this amazing view of the skyline. We also visited a lot of museums. This is from the Van Gogh exhibit. We also went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and this is from the Brooklyn Bridge. We just got so lucky to have nice weather and everything. And we went to a comedy club, which was in Brooklyn. Like it was very small, so I don't know why we ended up there, but it was so fun. And this is the view from the Empire State Building, and this is the view from the Rockefeller Center with the Empire State Building. And we also got to see the Christmas tree in front of the Rockefeller Center. And yeah, we walked around a lot. We did over 20,000 steps every day. And we got to see Phantom of the Opera in the famous Majestic Theater, which was probably my favorite thing to do. And the last day we spent in the Natural Museum. Yeah, and then it was time to fly back. And yeah, I don't know if you have like seen the news, but New York experienced a peak in COVID cases. And sadly, all of my friends got COVID, and I did too. So I had to spend several days in quarantine. But my host family made it fun, so it wasn't that bad. But I got to go to Mass on Christmas Eve, which was great. And yeah, that's a picture of us on that day. And we had a lot of fun on Christmas. I am so thankful that I was able to spend Christmas with my host family. This was on Christmas Day when we opened all our presents, and we made lasagna for Christmas Eve, which is apparently their tradition, and I appreciate it because lasagna is my favorite meal. So that was great. And then we went on our Christmas trip. We started in Williamsburg, and I got to see all the colonial sites, which was amazing. A lot of history, although I'm used to like much older history in Germany, but yeah. And we went to Washington. Here you see all these sites. We went like 4 hours, but got everything in. It was great, and all the memorials, like the World War II Memorial and the White House, and the Capitol, which we didn't raid, and yeah, the Supreme Court. We spent New Year's Eve in Richmond with Michael and his sister and her wife, and we went to this hibachi restaurant. It was my first time to see a hibachi restaurant, and we had a lot of fun. It was very delicious. And there's one New Year's Eve tradition in Germany. We all watch Dinner for One. It's a skit. You can find it on YouTube if you're interested. It's very funny. And yeah, we toured Richmond for like an hour by car. And yeah, it was beautiful. So it was a busy December, but I'm looking forward to the next few months. And yeah, thank you for watching.
Thank you, Celia. We're mighty proud to have you as our Rotary student. And to Mike, you and your family, thanks for the great job you're doing showing Celia the United States. Now I'd like to call past President Todd Gross forward to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Past President Eddie. And thank you for that presentation. Your observation about how long or old the history of Europe is reminds me of the old saying about that too. To the English, 100 miles is a long ways, and to the Americans, 100 years is a long time. So it's all a matter of where you stand. Before I introduce our speaker, I would like to take just a second to recognize someone who was introduced just a second ago, Jerome Russell. Jerome is the president of the H.J. Russell Company in Atlanta. He's also the treasurer of the Georgia Historical Society, and he's doing something remarkable in Atlanta, which he talked about, I think 2018, about 3 years ago. He is and his family are founding something called the Russell Innovation Center for Entrepreneurism. The purpose of it is to build Black businesses, to promote Black entrepreneurialism and entrepreneurship. And the way that they're doing that is through inspiration, through education, through helping budding Black entrepreneurs to find capital, and most importantly, to provide them with mentors, which if you are a budding capitalist, you need to have a mentor to help you with that. They're doing remarkable work. They've raised about $38 million for this center, and I'm hoping we can get Jerome to come back next year and to give us, or this year, and to give us a talk about a progress report on that, which is a great segue into what we're going to be hearing about today. It's an honor for me to introduce today's speaker, someone who truly needs no introduction to this club, the former mayor of the city of Savannah, Dr. Otis Johnson. For over half a century, Dr. Johnson has worked to make Savannah a better city. A Savannah native and a graduate of Beach High School, Dr. Johnson was the first African-American to graduate from Armstrong State University. He holds an undergraduate degree from the University of Georgia, a master's degree from Clark Atlanta University, and a PhD from Brandeis University. Before being elected mayor for the first of 2 terms in 2003, Dr. Johnson worked for the Economic Opportunity Authority, the Model Cities Program, and Savannah State University. He served 5 years on City Council and then as Executive Director of the Chatham-Savannah Youth Futures Authority. In July 2020, the current mayor, Van Johnson, formed the Racial Equity and Leadership Task Force, and he turned to former Mayor Johnson as the one person who is eminently qualified by education and experience and a lifetime of public service to lead the organization. When the task force released its report this past October, the Rotary Club recognized its significance for the future of our city and extended an invitation to Dr. Johnson to present the findings to our club today. And we are very pleased and honored to have him as our speaker today. Please join me in giving a warm Rotary welcome to the 64th mayor of the city of Savannah and my friend, the Honorable Dr. Otis Johnson.
Good afternoon. We don't have a lot of time to talk about something that is extremely important. So you have to forgive me for speeding up my comments, but I'm going to work with the gentleman over there to help me because I don't have a clicker either. So limited time, no clicker. We're going to do the best we can. I want to thank the Rotary for inviting me to talk about this report that we released in October. You can get this on the web, or either you can call the city manager's office if you want a hard copy. And if you're really anxious about it, I have a couple I'll give it to you at the end of the speech. But I want to set the stage because I'm an old academic. And in the social sciences, when we're going to talk about certain concepts that may not have a common understanding, we start out with what we call a working definition. So since we're going to be talking about equality, equity, and especially racial equity, I want to begin by saying that equality means to ensure that everyone has the same opportunities in order to enjoy whatever that society is offering. Equity means fair and just inclusion. And we're going to focus on the issue of equity because equality is an aspirational thing in this society. We all want to be equal. We all want equal opportunity. We even have a phrase about equal opportunity. And then racial equity ties on something that is very acute in the discussion of equity and equality, because we do have racial differences that we have to deal with. And Savannah is not unusual in the fact that so many of the issues that we have to deal with in our society and in our community has a racial overtone to it. So the Racial Equity and Leadership Task Force, next please. The Racial Equity and Leadership Task Force came into being when Mayor Van Johnson II asked 45 members to serve on the Racial Equity and Leadership Task Force, which we commonly refer to as REAL. The REAL Task Force was commissioned in July of 2020, and it came about as a result of a confluence of things that happened in 2020. The pandemic hit Savannah in the winter, and we had a lot of controversy of whether we shut down or whether we stay open, or what do we do to protect our citizens from this monster. And then in May, we had the George Floyd murder. And the confluence of these two things made it very possible to create a discussion that would take place over a year among these 45 citizens on what is the condition in Savannah in relationship to racial equity. Next slide. Oh, good. The Saplow Foundation found out what we were going to do and offered a grant to underwrite the work of the task force. And so because of the pandemic, we met every month by Zoom, and we were able to develop this report without having one in-person meeting of the entire group and not one in-person meeting of the work groups. And that was amazing. And it still is amazing to me that we could get this kind of work done. So our mission then was to look at what Savannah could tell us with the use of data on the level of racial equity. And so we started out saying that we wanted a vision statement. What is it that we desire for our community? And this is what we came up with. That Savannah, Georgia is an inclusive city where racial and ethnic differences are valued and respected. Savannah is committed to developing social, economic, education, and political opportunities for all, where diverse leadership and innovative solutions meet the needs of its citizens. In the ideal world, this is what we would want Savannah to be. And we wanted to put it in writing, and you're giving me an opportunity to begin in this new year to talk about this vision and to hopefully elicit your support to make this vision a reality. We also came up with a mission statement. And the mission statement is that our work as the Racial Equity and Leadership Task Force would be to advocate for racial equity in Savannah, Georgia. And we would identify the systemic and structural barriers caused by racism that makes it difficult for people of color to achieve their maximum potential. That is our mission, to move the city toward that vision by dealing with the systemic and structural barriers caused by racism that make it difficult for people of color to achieve their maximum potential. Now, this calls for courageous conversations, and I appreciate the opportunity to start that in Savannah in the first week of a new year. And so, in order to engage in this courageous conversation, which I hope you will sign on to, we said that we needed a conceptual framework to guide our work. And we said that REAL, with the assistance of a consultant, the Partnership for Southern Equity, would develop an analysis of racial disparities in Savannah by using the concept of a racial equity lens to guide our work. And this meant examining the critical sectors of the community. And these sectors were identified as employment, as health, housing, the environment, and the other things that I'll talk about a little later. And we wanted to use these things that are found in any community, whether that community is healthy, struggling, or not. These things need to be addressed. And so our conceptual framework was the racial equity lens. Next, please. We created a steering committee because we were 45 individuals, and as most of you know, if not all of you know, it is difficult to work with 45 type A personalities. And everyone on that task force really was a type A personality. They were strong in their own right, and we were coming together to create a working group. And so we had to create an infrastructure to get that done. So the mayor asked me to chair the group. Liz Ann Roberts, who some of you know, who is the executive director of the Coastal Georgia Indicators Project, was on the steering committee. Daphne Williams, assistant to the city manager. And you can look at, and I know it's difficult for you to see, but we had a steering committee made up of about a dozen people who then began to give structure. So we had a convener for criminal justice, for economic development and wealth building, for education, for the environment, for health, and for housing. Wherever you go in an organized society, you will find these institutions: education, some form of criminal justice, environment concerns, health, housing, and the rest. So we said that we would see Savannah through a racial equity lens. So here's what we found. Next, please. In the area of education, you can see the structure or the components, the racial components of our school system. 57% of our public school students are Black or African American. 28% are white, 7% Hispanic. With two or more races, there's a population of 5%, and Asians make up 2% of our public school system. Now, when you think about our community and the future of our community, because most of our young people attend the public schools, it is important to know the composition and nature of that public school system. Next slide, please. And this is kind of hard to see. If you would go on to, but to make a long story short, there is a tremendous gap in the performance of our young people in our public schools. And when we look at a marker that is used, third grade reading, we ought to be very concerned with the performance of children in our public school system. When you look at the number of Black students who are performing below grade level at the third grade level, it is alarming. Third grade is important because the first 3 years you are learning to read. And starting in the 4th grade year, you start reading to learn. So the pedagogy completely shifts from a focus on reading to a focus on comprehension. And if you have not mastered the skill of reading and comprehension by the end of the 3rd grade, it is difficult for you to continue to experience success in the grades to come. Only 14.8% of the Black 3rd graders scored proficient or above, compared to 52% of the white students on the 3rd grade reading test. I want to read that again. Only 14.8% of the Black 3rd graders, which are the majority in the school district, scored proficient or above, compared to 52% of the white students who scored proficient or above. So that should concern us in terms of what so many of you are concerned about, and that is the workforce. How will Savannah continue to have a viable workforce if we have these kinds of disparities in our school system, when we know that it's very difficult to overcome these disparities? And despite the fact that the school district now reports graduating almost 90% of its students, the question for us is, how can you have this number in the 3rd grade and have that number of graduates coming out of school? It just doesn't connect. It doesn't, something's wrong with that. So we're going to raise that issue. Next, please. Student discipline contributes in many ways to people dropping out of school and entering into the juvenile justice system. When you look at the discipline, and I'm so sorry that this is awkward and you can't see this data, so that's why you need to get it on the web so you can really see it. But again, there is a disproportionate number of African Americans who experience out of school suspension and other things that prohibit them from learning at the levels that they should learn. And we have documented the out of school suspensions and the disparities there. And because of time, I want to keep moving to the other things. But our school system is in trouble. And you can be nice about it, or you can speak truth to power and make it an issue. But our school system has some challenges, and I hope that some of you will rise to the occasion to begin a courageous conversation about the disparities between what we see in the 3rd grade and that very, very high graduation rate. So we need to deal with that. Next, please. And somebody sort of keep time. So I know you'll need to go back to work and make money, but so all right, 50, good, thank you. In the area of juvenile justice, and when you look at the factors in who becomes a member of the juvenile justice system, there is the direct correlation between problems in school and problems that get these young people arrested and committed to the juvenile system. There are articles and books written on the school to prison pipeline. If you aren't familiar with some of that work, you need to examine it because there is a direct correlation between school success and staying out of the juvenile system. And when you enter the juvenile system, you are blessed if you don't graduate to the adult criminal justice system. So all of these things are interrelated and interconnected, and it is our responsibility now to bring these to the attention of people who can do something about it, like you. Next system. All right, I won't talk about the criminal justice system. Earlier in the middle of last year, there were people in the Chatham County Detention Center that had been there more than 2 years waiting a trial. Now, we raised the issue of the principle of a speedy trial. And they were in jail because they were too poor or something prohibited them from posting bond. These were not violent criminals that needed to be in jail. And I'm not a bleeding heart. If y'all remember, when I was mayor, I said, if you do the crime, be ready to do the time. That was my position, and it's still my position. But there are people waiting trial who may be innocent because they haven't had a trial. And so this is another thing that we want to bring to your attention. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. We know that we have a poverty problem here, and it's been here a long time. My first professional job in 1965 was working for the anti-poverty program, and we were fighting poverty then, and we're still fighting poverty. So there's something very systemic about poverty in America and poverty in Savannah. You know that tourism and the service industry is a major, major part of our economy. And we have a federal guaranteed wage of $7.25. The Georgia wage is lower than that. And tip workers only guaranteed, I think, about $2.15 because they're supposed to be getting all of these tips, and so they don't need it. But we need to look at the minimum wage and how it creates among people who first do not get a good education. Therefore, they're limited in the kind of work they're capable of doing. Therefore, that limits the kind of income they have. And that limits the kind of opportunities they have to support themselves and their children. So all of this stuff is interrelated. Next, please. Our African-American entrepreneurs are struggling to make it. Many of them have great ideas. They're capable of doing the work or doing whatever they need to do to be successful at being an entrepreneur, but they cannot get the training or the capitalization that they need to be successful in what they can be successful at. And that affects all of the business community as well as the African-American community in particular. And so it was an honor yesterday for me to talk to Mr. Jerome Russell about the possibility of connecting with the great success that they're having in Atlanta with their entrepreneurial center to see if we cannot do better here at building additional successful entrepreneurs and therefore creating more jobs and more opportunity for the young people who happen to be African American. We know when we look at the employment statistics, the unemployment rate among African Americans has always been generally twice that of non-African Americans, and it's still that way today. But yet, when we look at the service industry and we look at who's working in the hospitals, taking care of COVID patients and cleaning the rooms and delivering the food and all those kinds of things, you will see that predominantly they're African Americans and now more and more Hispanics. So we need to face the reality of this issue and see if we cannot do something about it. We believe that we can do something about it if we get the will to do something about it. Next, please. And I will encourage you to go and look at these data because you can't get it from what I'm saying. You have to see it to really feel the impact. Next slide, please. When you look at this concept of food deserts and look where the grocery stores are, where the supermarkets are, where the healthy foods are sold, they're primarily not in the predominantly African American communities. There is a direct connection between healthy food, diet, and exercise and preventable diseases. So when we look at the data, and all of this is data driven, when we look at the data and we look at the percentage of obesity, heart attacks, diabetes, all of the kinds of things that can be prevented or controlled by healthy lifestyles, we find out again that there's a disparity between the white and non-white community, and they can be traced right back to certain lifestyle issues or certain opportunities for a healthy lifestyle, which includes not having food deserts where there is no access to healthy foods in the community. Next, please. I don't need to say anything long about housing. That's been on everybody's mind lately with the disproportionate rent burden. I don't know where you live, but if you earn $7.25 an hour, that comes to about $14,000 a year. the federal government through HUD says you're not supposed to spend more than 30% of your gross income on housing. What are you going to get when you take 30% of $14,000 to purchase or rent something in Savannah? First of all, purchasing something is out of the question because you can't get the down payment, because no bank is going to give you a mortgage when you are earning the minimum wage and that's all you have. Next, in environmental justice, is sort of hard for people to understand sometimes, but we have a disproportionate amount of asthma and other bronchial related issues, especially in residential communities close to our industries. Many of you are old enough to remember when Union Camp, now International Paper, was one of the great polluters, and people who lived in Hudson Hill and other areas adjacent to that plant, we could document the fact that they had higher levels of asthma compared to the general population. We also know that in a lot of our older neighborhoods, there's lead paint, and children tend to eat paint peelings, and therefore there's a disproportionate number of young people in the minority community who's suffering from lead poisoning and asthma and other kinds of things that can be traced directly to the environment. Now, briefly, we have tried to show you Savannah through an equity lens. And honestly, I can feel the tension in this room because I've been around long enough to be able to read things, and I've given a lot of speeches, and I can sense things. But there's a lot of tension in this room about what I am saying and the challenge that I'm putting out to you to join us in trying to do something to end some of these disparities. So here is the website, www.savannahgeorgia.gov/capital REAL. If you just go to the city's website, you may not have pencil and paper to take this down, but just go to the city's website, and after you get there, type in REAL, and you'll be able to get this report. It's 101 pages of data and information that everybody in this room should be familiar with. And I appreciate the opportunity for at least putting this on your agenda for your first meeting. Can you imagine that? Y'all gave me the opportunity to talk about this at your first meeting in 2022. And it is probably one of the most important things that you could start the year out with, acknowledging the fact that we have two Savannahs. We have one doing extremely well, which most of you are part and represent. And then we've got another Savannah that's struggling to make ends meet and to live the American dream. And so all of this stuff is so tied up and interconnected that we can't take one without looking at the whole system. And so I will now, if I have a few minutes left, entertain any question.
Take a couple.
Yes. Somebody who has a burning question or who wants to challenge me, I love it. I just love it because it's not me speaking. I am the voice of this data. And that's why I'm encouraging you to look at this data. And then you can challenge this data. But Otis Johnson is the messenger. Yes, sir. Dr. Presley. I have to ask the question. Yes, sir. From your perspective, what's the next step or steps? Yes, sir. I am, since the report came out, the task force has taken a break, a deserved break. So I am calling each member to ask them if they're willing to continue working on this racial equity task force. I am also taking volunteers who are finding out about this work and want to be a part of the real task force. So if you want to be a part of this effort to try to deal with these 6 areas of our community, you can let me know, and we will certainly put you on the task force. The plan is to take each of the 6 areas and to organize interested citizens who want to work in that area. People tend to do things they like and want to do. So if you're interested in education and you see the data in here talking about how challenging our school system is in terms of equal opportunity for all, join that group. If you're concerned about health, join that group. If you're interested in housing, join that group. If you're interested in entrepreneurship and trying to reduce poverty, we got work for you. So in each of the areas, there's an opportunity for citizens to join in what I'm considering a crusade to see Savannah through this equity lens and to reduce the inequities that are clearly documented. And if we can begin to do that as a community, this thing about, what is it? The tide rises, what is it? What? Hey, that, I can't say it right now because I'm struggling, but y'all know what I'm talking about. If Savannah is to be all that it can be, especially if you go back to that vision statement, why can't Savannah be like that vision statement? I think it can, but it will take all of us working together and having courageous conversations to get there. And so that's why I'm so grateful for this opportunity to start a courageous conversation with the Rotary Club, and hope that you will decide that among those 6 things, you might take on one of them, maybe not as a club, but as individuals in the club. So let me read in closing. Savannah, and I'm going to take a little license with it. I'm going to say Savannah can be, because it's not. Savannah can be an inclusive city, can be, where racial and ethnic differences are valued and respected. Savannah is committed, can be committed to developing social, economic, education, and political opportunities for all, and where diverse leadership and innovative solutions meet the needs of its citizens. Will you go to the last? The great novelist And playwright James Baldwin said, nothing not everything that is faced can be changed. We know that. But nothing can be changed until it's faced. And I'll read that again one more time. Not everything that is faced can be changed. All this stuff in this will take a long time, if ever, to change everything in here. But we can change some of it. And I'm asking for a commitment from our community, from the leaders like you, and from the privileged folk like you, to face these issues. And let's change what we can change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Johnson. We have a token for you today from the Candler Oak, the 300-year-old oak, as a token of you speaking with us today.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Is this from the one on Drayton?
Right.
Yeah. I'll make sure I do my best to keep it alive and get so big that I have to put it in my yard and plant it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A couple of quick announcements. The Georgia Charter Schools Association recognized member Barry Lawless, CEO of the Savannah Classical Academy, as its top school leader champion for children award. Special thanks to Paul Henchy and the St. Joseph's Candler Hospital that have more than doubled, if you find this interesting, their annual investment in home ownership down payment assistance program with the city of Savannah. And please keep Cliff McCurry in your thoughts and prayers. Cliff is at home recovering. Next week, we have an exciting program. We have Ben Simons from the Telfair, who's going to bring us up to date and to tell us about the William Golding exhibit. No further business to come before the meeting. The meeting is adjourned.
Hey.